So a popular question when people speak to me about my coursework is, what are circuits? You talk about circuits all the time. What are they? And I want to just share a little bit with you about how circuitry is impacting your life. For instance, you are perfect. You are living in a perfect world. It's all fine. And if you're not perceiving that world to be okay, then it's a circuitry issue. We land here, we splat. When we first come into this life, we kind of have a certain amount of circuitry in place and a whole bunch that isn't. And so we start encountering life and we kind of disperse, we scatter. And in that dispersed state, we start to develop a way of engaging out here, a way of engaging out here, a way of responding to parents, to teachers, then to bosses and friends and relationships. And it's all based upon circuitry that we have put in place as not our authentic self, but a protective self, a personality self, an ego self even. In fact, people don't really like to have an ego, so I don't really call it an ego. I call it the protective personality, and people don't seem to mind to have a protective personality, but they don't like to have an ego. So I call it that, and it works out just fine this way. We actually get a lot of work done with the ego, never calling it that. Meaning that we develop a false sense of self. We have an image of who we are and how things are supposed to go, how it's supposed to look, how we're supposed to perform in the world. I also call it the performing personality for this reason. So it's all based upon what we think we should be doing. So we then go through school, we go into the work world, we develop relationships, we do all kinds of ways of engaging in the outer world, we do all kinds of things, and it's all based upon this version of ourselves that we're aware of. And what isn't happening there is we aren't building the circuitry, and I'll explain what that means, but we aren't building the circuitry to tap our authenticity, our heart of hearts, our big truth, our intuition, which we call hunches, or this gut feeling that comes around every once in a while, when in fact, if we had the circuitry in place, that gut feeling would be the place we're living from all the time. It wouldn't be something that we encounter every once in a while. It would be a constant flow of knowingness in our lives, and you're supposed to have that. And my question to you is, do you? Do you feel like you do? Or do you feel like every once in a while you get caught up in that performing personality or that protective personality, and then you kind of forget about what you really wanted to say, who you really wanted to become, what really matters to you? And so we have to build a way of living that allows us to be in constant touch with that, so that we don't lose that connection, so that we don't ever disperse ourselves back out into this protective tendency to be hypervigilant, looking to the outer world to see if we're okay, looking to our superiors, or even projecting superiority onto other people just because that's the way of being or the pattern of thinking and behaving that we developed early on and have been living with that pattern ever since. So here's what I mean about circuits. There are two systems that run your body. One is an electromagnetic energy system, and it's actually the one that built the other one. And this other system is the central nervous system, as we're familiar thinking about, talking about, reading about, because we can dissect it, we can see it, we can touch it, and so it began to have more importance or significance in our culture, unfortunately, because this other system is actually the one that controls this one. If we master this one, we master this one. This nervous system, we know, we've been taught, has the ability to have a conscious and a subconscious set of circuits that are constantly running our lives. And we have a tendency to be caught up in the subconscious version of that, the part that we're not really in touch with, the part that's driving us, the part that we're not really aware of. And for some reason, we've lost touch with that New Year's Eve resolution that we came up with. We've lost touch with that vision that we had for ourselves. It was on our visioning board, or we've stepped out of the flow that was going to take us to the place in life that we really wanted to go. And the reason for that was we didn't have enough circuitry to anchor our awareness of that on a consistent enough fashion for it to manifest. So, circuitry involves both of these systems, okay? So, the electromagnetic energy flow is something that the Eastern culture studied for thousands of years, has reported on and recorded in the oldest texts that we know about humankind and consciousness and the development of the human conscious system. And it's referenced as the meridians and nadis, the Sushumna. If you're interested in that kind of thing, then you know what I'm talking about. If not, it has to do with that part of you that you can't really put your finger on, but you can feel some energy around your body sometimes. Or maybe even someone comes into the room. Maybe you're sitting and working on your computer and you don't really hear anybody or see anything, but you sense that someone's there. What has happened is you turn around then and you see that they're there. What has happened is they've stepped into your energy field. This is an electromagnetic energy field that is much bigger than your physical body. And it's actually the truth of who you are. In fact, quantum science is teaching us that that's who we are and that we have this body that carries us around through this third dimensional world and living the physical life that we're living. But quantum science is teaching us that actually you are the invisible self that's creating choice, that's manifesting things in your physical reality. It's a big picture concept. I certainly describe and explain more of that in my coursework called The Energy Codes and make it practical for you so that you can not only be aware of that, but you can learn to harness it and then ultimately manage it masterfully and then truly ultimately recognize, oh, that's who I am. You identify as it. So that big energy field has certain streams that flow through this physical body and beyond the physical body, and it has certain channels that it flows through, okay? So then we have this other system called the nervous system that has channels of nerve impulses that we're familiar with. We've studied with synapses of neurons carrying a message in a linear fashion from one nerve to the next to the next. This system, this electromagnetic energy essence, has an impact on the nervous system. If this system is chaotic and dispersed or weakened or agitated, it cues the nervous system to be on guard and to sense that maybe something's not safe, that something's not right. And so then we start looking around with our five senses to figure out, am I safe? Do I hear anything? Do I see anything? What's happening? So circuitry is a flow of communication. That's what I want you to get, all right? And what I want you to understand is that you have so far been living on a certain amount of circuitry that was based on survival. And maybe it's only 20 to 30% of what you're capable of experiencing. So we have to spend more time as a creative self instead of spending all of our time as a survivor self, if we want to be able to build more communication pathways in our overall system in a fashion that allows us to be creative and empowered and generative of our life experience instead of having to wait for someone else to create something that we enjoy so that we can have an enjoyable life, or wait for someone else to come up with something that we then decide we don't like, so we push against that and figure out who we are relative to someone else's creation. Either way, we're sitting around waiting a lot, and it's really not our destiny. It's not what we're built for. It's not what we're supposed to be doing here. We came here to this life to have a creative expression in the world, to be able to experience and generate heaven on earth, the life that we want to live. But we haven't been practicing We haven't been practicing life from that perspective. So our electromagnetic energy flow isn't flowing in an organized way to be strong enough to manifest such an impulse for your nervous system to build the synapses and the wiring together of nerve impulses that ground and anchor and sustain it. So consequently, we end up starting over again, all the time. We come up with new ideas, we envision the life that we would love to be living, and we get a few months down the road and we don't even remember having that amazing vision. You know, it's very common at certain times of the year when a few weeks or a few months have passed since we made our New Year's resolution, and we kind of don't even remember that we made it, much less what it was and the details of how magnificent it felt when we were putting our thoughts together and really writing those things down or claiming them to someone else. We have to build the circuitry, the pathways of communication to be able to acknowledge it, ignite it, and sustain it long enough that it can actually manifest in our lives. So my question to you is, do you have follow-through? Are you completing the loops on things? Are you able to turn around and say, yeah, I totally did what I thought I was going to do? Does it happen more often than not? Or is it a rare occasion when you are actually celebrating something that you did complete the loop on? So what I'm doing with the Energy Codes coursework is showing you how to complete those loops, to build the neurocircuitry. And here's the gist of it. When we create enough of a sensation deep in our core, our attention keeps coming to that sensation. When we haven't been living in our core, we can't pick up on the sensory reality that's happening in your gut. So these gut feelings are constantly happening, but your mind is way too busy trying to figure out if you're safe or not, if you're doing the right thing, or if they approve, to even notice this impulse that's trying to rise in your own system all the time. So the empowered reality that awaits you is there all the time. It's always been there. The issue is you haven't had the circuits in place to be able to perceive it. So we have to learn how to do that. We begin by building a sensory awareness at the core of our being that allows us to reference it constantly, that we're always in touch with the gut, that we're always in touch with our heart of hearts and our own deep wisdom that's already been collected in our lives. We are in touch, we're plugged in, and we are living as that. I hope you found this video helpful. If so, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and visit us at drsuemorter.com and sign up for our free membership and receive a free meditation. Thank you so much for spending time with us, and I can't wait to connect with you soon.